Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final episode of Project Pocket Monster Rebalancing Kanto Pokemon. Yes, I know what you're thinking. The final episode? Wait, what? It's the final episode of Rebalancing Kanto. There are still a few more regions to go, but in case you guys are new here, this is where we go through and we rebalance Pokemon that have previously been left by the wayside due to something known as power creep. I've explained power creep a number of times, but power creep is basically when new utilities and abilities are introduced to make old ones more irrelevant in the metagame. In the series, we do go through, we try to find a niche for all of these Pokemon, try to rebalance their stats, their abilities, their move pools, etc. to try to make them just a little bit better. So, if you guys have not been here before, there are a number of assumptions that we make when we do this rebalancing. If you have heard this, you can just skip to this time right here, and we can get you on with the rebalancing. But if you have not heard about these assumptions, you might want to stick around because they will directly affect how we balance and how we approach our balancing of these Pokemon. So, the assumptions are, we're not changing the type chart or type matchups of any Pokemon at all. So, what does that mean? Ice is still super effective against grass. Fire is still super effective against steel. None of the type chart or type matchups are being changed. All of that is being left consistent as it is in vanilla Pokemon. We're not changing the effects of abilities. There's abilities that are straight up bad, like Keen Eye, Big Pecs, Leaf Guard, Healer. All of those abilities are bad, but rather than tweak how they work, we're instead opting to give Pokemon better abilities that are actually useful. We're not changing the effects of any pre-existing abilities. We're also not changing the base power or the power points of moves. We're not going to make Astonish a 90 base power ghost type move, and we're not going to make Drain Punch have 40 PP. None of that stuff. All of the moves, that is all consistent with vanilla Pokemon. But the last and most important assumption is that these changes have to fit thematically. Now, what does thematically mean? Well, for those of you who've already been here and you already know, changes have to make sense based on previously established lore and Pokédex entries. So we're not going to give something like Charizard Muddy Water. Charizard does not like the water. It doesn't necessarily need a water type coverage move, nor would it benefit from it. We're not going to give it Storm Drain in that same sense. We're not going to give, Porygon, Huge Power, different things that don't necessarily line up with any of the lore. If the lore says that a Pokemon is really fast, we can boost its speed, but if the lore says that this Pokemon is really weak, we're not going to give it 200 base attack. We have to make sure that everything we do makes sense and lines up with how these Pokemon are supposed to be. Keep in mind, guys, this is also a meta without Mega Evolution, Z-moves, or Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, so none of the cyclical stuff that Game Freak has chosen to include or not include in their games, all of that is gone when we do the analysis of these Pokemon. It is just the basic monsters. Remember, guys, this is all for fun. This is, in fact, the last episode of Rebalancing Kanto, but if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns about what I've done or what you would do, you can either, one, leave a comment, and maybe I'll get back to you, comment it down below, like and subscribe, haha. Or two, I'm going to be having an announcement at the end of this video regarding how we're going to wrap up this Rebalancing Kanto series. But I'll save that for the very end. Let's get on with the rebalancing. So starting right off the bat, Omastar. Now, Omastar is, by all means, a pretty good Pokemon. It's a decent Shell Smash Sweeper. It's got base 55 speed, which isn't anything crazy, but for Shell Smash Sweepers, it's actually a little bit better than the average. I think of Gorobus, I think of Caracosta. Both of them have lower speed tiers than Omastar does. Rock Water isn't a very good typing, but it does get access to Spikes. Now it gets access to Meteor Beam. Mostly what Omastar is known for is a Shell Smash Swift Swimming monster. Sometimes you can run like a Focus Sash Weak Armor set. You could also run a Power or Meteor Beam set. I've seen that coming around a lot of times. But overall, Omastar is not very unique in what it does. It is pretty okay, but I wouldn't consider it to be a very overwhelming Pokemon. It can spiral out of control, but there's a lot of setup and support that needs to happen in order to make sure that it gets there. It's still weak to priority, so even if it does get that Shell Smash up, Vacuum Wave, Mach Punch, Bullet Punch is neutral, Aqua Jet's neutral, Sucker Punch is neutral, that sort of thing, it can be picked off. It's not going to necessarily run over all types of teams, but besides being a delegated Shell Smash Sweeper that needs a lot of support, needs some sort of weather, it can set hazards, but other than that, Omastar does not have a lot going for it. So, there's a few things that I want to do to fix Omastar. And actually, there's a couple of things that are really fun that I do to Omastar. So starting right off the bat, I want to give Omastar 20 points into its SPDEF. Right now, its base stat total is 495. I think that having its base stat total be 515, being in line with the other Generation 1 fossil, Aerodactyl, makes a little bit of sense. It is a Pokemon you get later in the game. I think it makes sense that it should be a little bit stronger, a little bit beefier than some of the other ones you've encountered previously. So that puts its defensive profile at 70, 125, and 90, actually, which is pretty good. It's rock water though, so it's still weak to a bunch of common special attacking types, being, grass, electric, that sort of thing. But what we're really going to do is we're going to change Omastar's abilities. So I've talked about before how there is a abundance of Swift Swim sweepers. Swift Swim is actually the most common ability in all of Pokemon. That's a fun fact for you guys if you didn't know that. And I think that while there's a lot of them, Omastar is actually one that does Swift Swim pretty well. It's actually one of the better ones, especially with access to Shell Smash. So we're going to leave Swift Swim. That's something that Omastar's been known for, and I don't want to touch that. Weak Armor also, I think, has some potential and viability, being able to potentially set up a layer of hazards, maybe Shell Smash, live a hit, and then have an extra little bit of speed boost. A +3 speed is much better than a +2 speed, especially coming off base 55 speed. So I think Weak Armor is absolutely okay. Now, I know you see it. It's right there. I'm aware. I actually want to get rid of Shell Armor for Shields Down. Now, whoa, you guys. I know. You're going to... What Shields Down? It doesn't make any sense. Let me explain. A lot of Omastar's Pokédex entries reference the fact that it went extinct because its shell was too heavy for it. It wasn't able to move as freely as it otherwise would have been able to. And I thought that giving Omastar the ability Shields Down, which is previously the signature ability of Minior, is a really cool thing for it to have. So when Omastar enters its Shields Down form, this is what it's going to look like. I had an artist do this for me. It was something I was really excited about, so I was willing to pay a little bit of money for it. Thank you, shout out Ninkata, for this rendition of Shields Down Omastar. And when Omastar reaches half health, its shell breaks and it is let loose from its previous shackles. Now, what does that do for Omastar? Well, if it's a Focus Sash set, you can automatically get a Shell Smash up. You can live with 1 HP, and you can then activate Shields Down after you live with the Focus Sash. So all of a sudden, you have a Shell Smash boost, plus you're now this new Shields Down form. Let's talk about the Shields Down form for a minute, though. Leave the HP stat the exact same, because that's just sort of how it has to be for Shields Down to function correctly. Doing the math off half HP needs it to be consistent. When Shields Down activates, Omastar will get 45 points to its attack stat. It'll lose 70 points to its defense. It'll gain 20 in its special attack. It'll lose 55 points in its SPDEF, and it'll also gain a crazy 80 points of speed. Now, this Pokemon is min-maxed to heck. If you have to run a Focus Sash, you're not running a White Herb, so these Shell Smash boosts actually have the trade-off, the -1 SPDEF, the -1 defense. That still comes into play, assuming you don't live a hit, which means that Omastar with base 70, 55, 35 defensive profile and no form of priority means that Omastar can be picked off by pretty much any neutral and even not very effective priority. However, 135 speed at +2 special attack, +2 attack. This thing is able to just absolutely rip holes in teams. I wanted Omastar to be a very polarized sort of Pokemon. If it's not going to get one-hit KO'd before it can even activate Shields Down, then as soon as it gets Shields Down up, it should be able to reap the benefits of it really greatly. While still being weak to priority, still not being able to touch a lot of Pokemon, especially if you're running, Power Gem, Scald, Ice Beam. A lot of specialty defensive walls will still be able to eat a lot of attacks, and then even be able to KO with some of their weaker moves because its stat spread is now so frail. But Omastar now has the ability to break past a lot of things, and actually makes for a very interesting sweeper. So before we talk about Omastar a little bit more, I want to get into the moves that I want to give it. So I want to give Omastar Octazooka, Liquidation, Clamp, and Power Gem. for its stab. I think that Omastar has been very clearly lacking a special rock type stab that's not Meteor Beam. I don't think it should have to run Meteor Beam in order to actually have some sort of special attacking rock type hit. So Power Gem to me makes a lot of sense. I want to give it Drill Peck, Snap Trap, again, Generation 8 move, Galarian Stunfisk, and it's a grass type move, so allows it to hit other bulky water types. Granted, it's only 35 base power. Bite, Crunch, and Lockjaw, as well as Poison Fang. Now, it's said that Omastar, once it bites at the prey, it will never let go until it has sucked out all of its life. I thought that a couple of biting moves actually makes a lot of sense for Omastar, as well as I want to give it Leech Life, Sludge Bomb, and Sludge Wave. So, let's take a step back. Let's talk about some of the tools we've given it. Obviously, now Omastar has Poison type coverage. It's got a little bit of flying coverage if it really wants to run a physical set. Obviously, a physical Omastar set wouldn't work that well because its attack is only base 60 before a Shields Down boost. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's not coming with Rain, however. So there's a whole bunch of ways that Omastar can now be played. If you see in the team preview that there's a Drizzle setter as well as an Omastar, you can probably bet that it's Swift Swim. If you see that Omastar is just there on its own without Drizzle, it's probably Shields Down. It might even be weak armor. This sort of diversity to what Omastar can do actually really helps it. As a rock water type, it has a absolute metric ton of weaknesses. But being able to hit things a little bit better with Poison type coverage, Dark type coverage, a couple of trapping moves, Snap Trap, Clamp, and Jaw Lock actually are a really big deal for it. If for whatever reason it's able to sort of pin a wall down, then it can sort of start boosting off of that. If it hits Jaw Lock on, let's say, like a Toxapex or something like that, Toxapex is now stuck, and Omastar can just start maybe Shell Smashing, what have you, set up spikes. It has the ability to do a lot of things now. No, I do not think that this necessarily breaks Omastar. I think that it's very good. And while 135 base speed might be a little on the steep side, I think that its defensive profile, especially after the Shields Down boost, is totally fair. Being able to be picked off by priority, still affected by all types of entry hazards if it's not running a Focus Sash or a White Herb. If it happens to be running Booties, then, obviously you did a great job, Omastar player. But there's a lot of things that can now whittle down Omastar no matter what. You can't run Shell Smash Substitute and then 2 moves. Obviously, something's going to wall you. But Omastar now has a ton of different ways to sweep the opponent. I thought that Shields Down, while a relatively underutilized ability on Minior, I think that it fits Omastar really well because its shell is what led it to become extinct. And if it was able to ever shed that shell, then I think we'd be in for a crazy monster of a Pokemon. Which brings us into Kabutops. Now, Kabutops is by no means a bad Pokemon either. It's actually relatively fine as a Choice Scarfer, as a Swift Swim Sweeper. It doesn't have access to entry hazards or Shell Smash a la Omastar. Kabutops is basically Omastar if it didn't have Shell Smash and it had 25 more points into speed, as well as being a physical attacker. Kabutops works fine as a Swift Swim Sweeper, as well as a Choice Scarf user, but other than that, Kabutops has real no place in the upper tiers. It's not very good. Obviously, it still has weaknesses to grass, to electricity, to fighting. It's still neutral or hit super effectively by a lot of different kinds of priority. It has no way to heal itself. It's weak to all forms of entry hazards. There's a lot going on with Kabutops that, while it can play its niche as the Pokemon, especially considering it has access to Rapid Spin, which actually makes it a little bit better in Generation 8. But there are a few things that I'd like to do to Kabutops just to make it a little bit better, a little more up to speed, as well as putting him on equal footing with Omastar, who we just touched. So, first things first, Kabutops has always been a Swift Swim Sweeper. Now, there's an abundance of Swift Swim Sweepers, and I want to separate how Kabutops does it from how Omastar does it, and how a bunch of other Swift Swim users also do it. So, I'm actually opting to get rid of Swift Swim on Kabutops. I think that its Choice Scarf set is generally better, and there are other better Swift Swim Sweepers, including Kingdra, including Omastar, etc. So, I'm actually going to get rid of Swift Swim for a Generation 7 ability that has not seen any other love besides Delmise, being Steel Worker. Now, what Steel Worker does is it gives Kabutops stab on all steel type moves that it uses. It basically gives it a third offensive type But what Steelworker does is it allows it to hit hard with stronger steel-type attacks. Obviously, I think this makes sense. It's got these quite literal, like, steel scythe blade things attached to its arms, which I guess are its arms, frankly. But I think that it makes Kabutops really, really cool. Having a rock-water type means that it's a little lackluster. It's a decent offensive typing, but adding steel to the mix makes it an actual offensive powerhouse, especially on the physical side. So, for Kabutops, I wanted its base stats to mirror that of our newly balanced Omastar. I gave it 10 points into its HP, 10 into its attack, 10 into its defense. I subtracted 5 from its special attack, 15 from its special defense, and I added 10 to its speed. This puts it at the same 515 that Omastar is at, and is also Omastar's stat distribution just shuffled up a little bit. Kabutops is faster. It's now a little bit frailer on the special side in exchange for more power, more defense, it's just more power and more defense, as well as a little bit more HP, which helps it potentially live a hit anyway. A 125 base attack, really, really good. 115 defense as well is a little bit better. I think that Kabutops, especially now that it's lacking Swift Swim, being a Choice Scarf user mostly, I think that would really help it a lot. Now it can actually utilize the ability Weak Armor as well, because base 90 speed is obviously much, much better than base 80. But let's talk about some of the moves that I want to give Kabutops. So as far as the moves that I want to give Kabutops, I want to give Kabutops Flip Turn, Razor Shell, and Rock Blast. And yes, I see that these other moves are under the Stab category. The only reason that Iron Head, Metal Claw, and Smart Strike, which I'm also going to give it, are under the Stab category, is because they get Stab off of the Steelworker ability. It's sort of a technicality, so that's why I kind of asterisk them right there. In addition, for coverage, I want to give Kabutops Bone Rush, Earthquake, Cross Poison, Leech Life, Acrobatics, Throat Chop, and Dual Chop. And as far as setup and support goes, I want to give it access to the same type of entry hazards that Omastar is able to set in Spikes and Toxic Spikes. So let's unpack what we've done to Kabutops. Now, Kabutops is now a entry hazard setter with Stealth Rock, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes, who also has access to Rapid Spin, who also has access to a pivoting move and flip turn, as well as pseudo stab on its steel type attacks. What this means is that you can build Kabutops a whole bunch of ways. It could be a lead, it could be a late game cleaner, it could be a choice scarfer, etc. There's so many things that Kabutops can do. With steel type stab being able to hit fairy as well, this makes Kabutops much better against a lot of fairy types, notably because of its base 90 speed and 125 attack stat. But it gives it this sort of rock, water, Delmise vibe. Being able to have rapid spin, doesn't have any sort of reliable recovery outside of leech life, but that's not really what I consider reliable. But being able to have rapid spin, have pseudo steel type attacks, as well as potentially be a lead, is a really, really big deal for Kabutops. And actually gives it a lot more usage instead of just being relegated to Swift Swim teams, which a lot of water types tend to be. Granted, this is all a trade-off. Having only base 55 special defense means that a vacuum wave will destroy it, means that any sort of special hit will pretty much decimate it. It can't really switch in to Scalds, or can't really switch into certain types of walls that will threaten it with Scald and what have you. But it is a very powerful physically attacking Pokemon now. Base 90 speed, much better to be Choice Scarfed, and having access to a slew of coverage moves as well as Swords Dance means that Kabutops, even if it gets a weak armor boost off, can actually start sweeping teams. So you could run a Focus Sash weak armor set in the same sense as Omastar. Obviously you don't have access to Shell Smash, but there are a number of options that Kabutops gets. Being that it now has access to a whole bunch of different coverage moves means that you can run your Kabutops any way you like without having to delegate it as a Swift Swim sweeper, which is, I think, really, really important for a lot of these Pokemon. It's giving them the ability to sort of be built differently. So that's all we're going to do for Kabutops. Again, 515 base stat total. Same thing as Omastar, same thing as Aerodactyl. And I think that these changes to it make it actually quite good. Specifically the speed and attack boosting, as well as obviously Steelworker. Which brings us to Aerodactyl. Now, I actually don't think that Aerodactyl needs to be changed all that much. 105 base attack and 130 speed is actually pretty solid, as well as pretty decent abilities in Rock Head and Pressure. Obviously, Unnerve is a little underwhelming, but I think that Aerodactyl, especially in Generation 8, with the introduction of Booties, as well as having access to Dragon Dance and Dual Wing Beat, is actually fairly underrated as a Pokemon, but there are a couple of moves that I'm going to give Aerodactyl. I am not going to change Aerodactyl's stats at all. I think Aerodactyl's stats are totally fine. Base 515 is totally good. 130 base speed is also pretty solid. And 105 base attack, as I've mentioned, is pretty good as well. The only things I'm going to do to change Aerodactyl are going to be to give it 2 same type attack bonus moves. I want to give it Head Smash, and I want to give it Brave Bird. Yes, it's finally happening. Aerodactyl has been lacking Head Smash and Brave Bird ever since Generation 4. Its flying type coverage has been stuck to Aerial Ace, and while it's a little bit better in Dual Wing Beat now, I think that Brave Bird and Head Smash, especially with the Rock Head ability, make Aerodactyl a super good Pokemon. Such a force to be reckoned with. An insane wall breaker, an insane setup sweeper. Head Smash, Brave Bird, and Fire Fang with Dragon Dance is something that's absolutely crazy. Even you don't even have to run Fire Fang. You could run Stealth Rocks instead. You could lead with Aerodactyl. A Stealth Rock, Dragon Dance, Head Smash, Brave Bird set is going to be cleaving through teams if given the opportunity. Obviously, it's still weak or neutral to a whole bunch of forms of priority, but I really think that only Head Smash and Brave Bird are necessary in order to get Aerodactyl the spotlight that I so think it deserves. I think it's very good and very strong. So I'm actually surprised that it hasn't been used as much as it already has. But I think it deserves these moves. So that's all we're going to be doing to change Aerodactyl. Which brings us into Snorlax. Now, I'm not going to be touching Snorlax. I think that Snorlax is a phenomenal Pokemon and always has been a phenomenal Pokemon. 160 base HP, 110 base special defense. This thing gets Rests, Curses, Sleep Talks, Darkest Lariats. You can run Belly Drum Snorlax if you really want to. This thing's a setup sweeper. It's a special wall. It's an Assault Vest user. It literally does so much. Being a normal type with thick fat is really helpful. Having immunity as well means you can't be toxic, so it's able to sort of stall out things as well. Gluttony is an alright ability as well in case you wanted to run a Belly Drum set, but overall Snorlax has a very high base stat total. It's got a whole bunch of different sets that it can run, as well as having just a crazy amount of moves it has access to. Snorlax can do so many things. It has a recycle sets as well. Obviously Munchlax has recycle, but Snorlax is totally fine as it is. I don't feel the need to change it at all. If there's one thing that people bring up, it's giving Snorlax something like Slack Off. I think that that's absurd. 160 base HP, 110 special defense, and 65 defense. This thing does not need access to reliable recovery, especially since it actually has a physically offensive presence in 110 attack. So, that all being said, I'm going to leave Snorlax the exact same. Which brings us to Zapdos. Now, you might be thinking, where's Articuno? Well, we'll get to Articuno, but I'm not going to be changing Zapdos either. Spark Notes versions, obviously Zapdos is electric flying, super good at defensive typing. You wouldn't think that 90, 85, 90 defenses is very good, but in combination with Roost, Volt Switch, the ability to be run in the rain, a Rocky Helmet, it's actually a really good defensive beast. Having access to Heat Wave, I believe it has Air Slash. In Generation 8, it might even get Hurricane. Zapdos has and always will be an absolutely really good Pokemon. Base 100 speeds, nothing to sneeze at as well. You can run it bulky, you can run it fast. It's already super versatile. Zapdos is totally fine, and I shouldn't have to explain any more than that why I think it is as such. And the second legendary bird we're to cover is Moltres. Moltres is also, in my opinion, pretty fine. In Generation 8 specifically, giving access to heavy duty booties means that Moltres can actually come in and hit very hard with a lot of very strong attacking moves. Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Air Slash, it gets Scorching Sands now, Hurricane. Moltres is a very strong special attacker, and it's even a defogger with heavy duty booties. You can run it heavy duty boots, you can run it a Scarf, you can run it Specs with a Roost, you can even run it sort of Stally with Pressure, Substitute, Toxic, that sort of set. I think that while Moltres is slower than a lot of its fire type competition, its strengths sometimes outweigh the weaknesses. And I think that Moltres is actually totally fine and has yet to see the peak of its existence in Generation 8. So, totally good. To the shock of nobody, I'm not going to be touching Dragonite at all. Multi-scale, totally fantastic ability. Being able to take even a super effective ×4 hit from full is absolutely absurd. 134 base attack is nothing to sneeze at. After a Dragon Dance boost, Extreme Speed is just cleaving through teams. It's got access to a whole bunch of different coverage moves. You can even run it as a special attacker. Dragonite is totally fine. I've seen recently Dragonite's actually been sort of a stall monster as well, and I think that's really, really cool. Special defensive Dragonite is an absolutely real thing. And yeah, Dragonite is totally fine as it is. The original Dragon type, super good ability, super good type, super good attacking stats. Just, it's good. It doesn't need anything. It's good. Believe me, it's good. Mewtwo. Yep. And this brings us to Mew. Mew is very good as well. I'm not going to be touching Mew. Base 100 stats across the board. Access to literally every single move in the entire game. Mew can be run an infinite number of ways. It can cause problems for your team that you didn't even know existed until it hit the field. Mew is absolutely crazy. Access to every move. Synchronize. It can set up sweep. It can set up hazards. It can stall. It can, like, anything you want Mew to do, it'll do. So Mew does not need to be touched. Which brings us to the Pokemon that I skipped over, and the only one of the Generation 1 legendaries that we're going to be touching at all. So, Articuno. Let's talk about Articuno real quick. Obviously, in Generation 8 with Heavy Duty Booties, Articuno is, in fact, a little bit better, but that doesn't change the fact that it's Ice Flying type, and its best stat is its special defense. Obviously, Ice types are not known for being defensive in any sense of the word, but I think that being the Blizzard Pokemon, it makes sense for us to give Articuno one ability that I think will really, really help it in the long run. So, without further ado, I want to give Articuno access to Snow Warning. There's not enough Hail Setters as it is, in my opinion, and I think that being the Blizzard Pokemon, the one that flies around glaciers and tundras and saves people from snowstorms, it makes sense. Articuno, an embodiment of ice, to get Snow Warning. This opens up a whole world of possibilities for Articuno, but first let's talk about the moves that it is now going to get. So as far as additional moves go, I want to give Articuno Oblivion Wing, Glaciate, and Icicle Crash. That is it. I don't feel it needs access to any sort of coverage moves or any sort of setup and support moves. I think that it's totally fine and wouldn't really be able to fit any more moves than that on its kit anyway. Articuno with Snow Warning. That automatically makes it an Aurora Veil setter. Being weak to Stealth Rocks times 4 means that even if Articuno wanted to set up Aurora Veil with Snow Warning with Aurora Veil, it would be taking 49% or 50% from Stealth Rocks when it comes in, assuming it's running a Light Clay, so you have to choose between Booties or Light Clay, but being an Aurora Veil setter automatically makes Articuno much better, and actually makes it a lot better in doubles as well. Access to Reliable Recovery, as well as same type attack bonus, special attack Oblivion Wing. I gave it Oblivion Wing as a flying type special stab that also gives it access to some sort of reliable recovery. If you're not careful, Articuno will stall you, it will Oblivion Wing you, it will Aurora Veil, it might even Glaciate, slow down your speed. I gave it access to Oblivion Wing because I think that being a deity that kind of hovers around mountains and sees people at their wits' end when they're lost, I think that this sort of makes sense for it as a Pokemon. It sort of fits a little bit thematically, as well as helps its kit a lot. I'm not going to be touching its stats at all. Obviously, 580 is very, very good. It's a little lackluster for a legendary Pokemon, but considering the other birds are at 580, I didn't feel the need to change it at all. Base 95 special attack is still nothing really that special, but access to a couple of special moves in Oblivion Wing, and even a physical move in Icicle Crash, as well as now having access to Snow Warning to set up Aurora Veil, makes Articuno much, much better than it previously was. Oh-wee! Ladies and gentlemen, that has been Project Pocket Monster Rebalancing Kanto Edition. We've done it. We did it. We made it through 151 Pokemon. I cannot believe it. I want to thank you all for coming on this journey with me. Obviously, we have a lot more work to do as far as rebalancing. So, what are the next steps? Well, this video is going to go up on Tuesday. This video is going to go up on Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Now, next Tuesday, instead of rebalancing Pokemon Johto, I'm going to be taking a short break from rebalancing Pokemon. Instead, I'm going to be doing a addendum to this rebalancing Pokemon, Rebalancing Kanto. And it's going to be a stream. So, what I'd like, I'm going to do a stream on Tuesday night. I'm going to have this page open, and I'd like to hear from you guys. If you're watching this video and you comment, I would love to get together and talk about the different things, the different moves I did, the changes I did, and the types and abilities, that sort of stuff in real time. I think that would be so interesting, and everybody would be able to have a hand in helping me re-edit a lot of these things. Again, none of this stuff is set in stone. If there is an idea that you have that I like, I might pick it up. I might use it. If you think there's a Pokemon that I didn't touch that you personally would touch, we can do that as well. I think it would be just a lot of fun to talk rebalancing with y'all. I hope it goes well, and I hope to see you guys there. Let's say 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. Rebalancing Pokemon Kanto Addendum. I want to see y'all there. We can talk about Pokemon. We can talk about rebalancing. It'll be a ton of fun. Bring your best ideas. That all being said, thank you all for watching. This does bring an end to Rebalancing Kanto Pokemon in its regular form. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, comment on a whole bunch of stuff that I've done. Let me know how you feel about Shields Down Omastar, Steelworker Kabutops, Aerodactyl with Head Smash, and Snow Warning Articuno. I put a lot of work into the series, and now that it's finally wrapped up, I can have a nice little bow on it at the end with this addendum. But yeah, all the support has been greatly appreciated, and Rebalancing Johto will come in time. But until then, I'm going to get out of here. Till next time.